And welcome to another exciting episode of The Energy That Surrounds Us. I'm your host, Michael. And in full disclosure, I am pulling an audible and not wearing my normal hat right now. I'm going to wear my Bucky's Santa hat for a little while, maybe the whole episode. Just decided to have a little fun, lighten it up a little bit. And tonight, I have a very special guest who I have been so excited to have on the show. I met her on LinkedIn, and I think you all are going to have so much fun listening to her and all the information she has to share. And I could go on and state her entire bio, but I feel like I won't do it any justice. So I'm going to turn it over to my guest to introduce herself. So I give you the one, the only magnificent Madel Niff.
Thank you, Michael. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me. Yeah, um, I don't know. Um, I think that starting by the latest project I'm involved on, I am the founder and CEO of At and Wonder. It's upcoming social media that will support the niche of ufology, interdimensional phenomena, and all that. I'm also a remote viewer, an author. I published this year a children's book, Whispers of the Starry Night. You guys can check on that. I don't know. I dabble a little bit on the arts of a little bit of alchemy, mysticism, and what involves spirituality in order to help me to understand better about this interdimensional reality that is actually our reality, but it hasn't been taught to us that way. So I openly decided to mix that with some physics, and that's so on give some ground for the work I'm doing.
So, alchemy, that's a term that I've heard described quite a few ways. What is the way you describe it, and how did you get started in it?
That's a very good question. Um, Alchemy, it is just not just is that is the art of changing any element to any other. So um, alchemy, for example, is like Isaac Newton was an alchemist. So he was a mathematician and in between other things. For me, I got into that was actually somewhat by accident or not. Growing up, I always had this spiritual side very present, very, you know. So one thing I guess took me to other, and the alchemy on my personal practice has been in a way that has helped me to understand myself and the bio life, because there is not biological life in a way. But it helps me to understand my space and how I can integrate better and make the experience of being here and alive um, more enjoyable. That makes sense. At least I see that way.
It does, actually, and I gotta say, I'm kind of curious when you say no biological. What exactly do you mean? Because I'm like, I know that like a lot of people will say like our bodies are shells for our spirit. Is that what you're meaning by non biological?
Yeah. So by experience, I've encountered beings per se that were not somewhat biological, didn't look like, was more machine like. But yeah, I'm not certain. But there are things that we interact on a daily basis that we're not even aware, that are not how we understand being biological. But in my opinion, everything is actually synthetic. We just understand in a different way.
So when you're talking about beings that are mechanical in nature, are you referring to like what we would call extraterrestrial being or a star being, or is it something that you feel like is more like a cybernetic, like someone created like an android or cyborg, and it's like a teaching tool for you?
Um, I do not necessarily learn from this being that I've encountered. I just had a experience. I was actually meditating, and sometimes you can reach thresholds that you can see things in a different way, you can interact things in a different way. And in this specific occasion, this being actually came out of nothing. The way that looked was kind of like, literally like when people mention the fabric, when people mention that, the fabric. So it literally came out of something, out of nothing, kind of like a fabric.
Okay.
And it looked like, Star Wars.
I do
No,
actually.
yeah, I don't know, because not everybody, you would be surprised, could be familiar. Anyways, so General Grievous, the big android that is almost every. So it
Right.
looked like that, like very close to that, and it was very big, and I saw it coming out, and then it noticed that I was noticing it. And then the communication that happens is pretty much telepathic. So I asked, like, what is going on? I have this that I don't ask names because I don't know, but I just said, what is going on? And then he said that he was just scanning. And we had an interaction, and it went its merry way. But
Well, no, I mean, I feel like that's really interesting and cool that you were able to gain this new perspective from this encounter. And I'm curious if this was the only encounter with other type of beings, or is this something that happens with you on a semi-regular basis or regular basis?
yeah, with that specific kind of being, yeah, was the first and last time for now. But encounters with different kind of intelligence has been my entire life since I know myself to be, pretty much.
So
Yes.
what are so what are the encounters like? Is it just you go to sleep and you find yourself in their world, or do they come to you, or
Um. Most part of them that it happens when I'm wide awake, which um, I don't know. But I did have experiences, out of body experiences as well. But how it happens is very, because the thing is, I grew up back in Brazil. I was born and raised in Brazil. It's been about 10 years I've been here living in US. But the culture we have there is pretty superstitious. We are pretty open with spiritual practices. So in the same group of friends, you can have somebody that practices African rooted religion, an evangelical person, and a Catholic, and all that. We don't have this. It's pretty open and normal. So what I what I'm trying to say is that it's been normal for me to perceive that as it was a spiritual experience. I didn't actually knew or understand that it was more interdimensional nature of things the way I see, because everything on how I see is that we all are a derivative of some kind of level of energy. So after I came to understand, especially this past, I don't know, 15 years, and so I've been learning more about that, if that makes sense.
It does, and I have to say, when I was reading your bio that you sent me, and you said interdimensional contactee, that's the first time I think I've ever actually seen in a bio that terminology. And so I was like, interdimensional. That has so many questions to it by its own nature. And so my first question around that would be, is when you're saying interdimensional, inter normally in science means like inner or close to. So would you say that these dimensions are inner Earth or hollow Earth or here somewhere on our planet? Or how do you describe the interdimensional, where they come from?
Interdimensional, for what I understand, there are many levels to it because it depends. It's relative to your point and what is your perceivable reality, and then in dimension to that. Um, Once I've had an experience, um, I still don't know what happened there, but was here where we are, but those beings, they could see everything, our lives and everything, but the density between us and them was different, to the point that they humans were walking and passing through them, kind of like we understand ghosts and stuff. But they did have their own buildings, they did have their own, um, like we have. But what I was told is that they always knew about us, they always lived with us, but we don't know about them, we don't understand them. But they've been always aware of us, but we haven't been of them. And it was coexisting. So I understand that, as far as dimensional, it has a lot to do with density. But when it comes to places like you mentioned in Earth, I think that is also dimensional, but in a different way. But because it depends on material layers of what is bottom, what is up. I don't know how to explain. I don't know if if you're getting what I'm trying to say. If not, please let me know.
I do get it, and I'm curious along those lines of, when you hear claims or stories or people share with you, like, oh, there was something out of the corner of my eye, I saw something there, but then it disappeared. And I've started coining the term shadow being because I didn't know what else to call it. And hearing your description of being dimensional, could it
Exactly.
be?
That's what I thought too. They do have the whole eye dark. They look pale. The dimension is kind of like, the sepia filter on the phones. It's kind of like without color. It's kind of like shadowy, but it's just a a shadow. Like it's just like a palette of colors, not like colorful. But that's exactly what I thought that was.
So, do you feel like they're here to help us and you're able to tune in to where they're at so they work with you versus trying to get other people and going, like, in essence being like holding up a sign that says, hey, we're here, anybody here?
I feel that humans, we are going through a rapid um, consciousness evolution that takes us to be more observable to things around us. And technology, I feel that has helped a lot because it helps us to relate and not think that we are just the only case that is, we crazy or something like that. But um, I feel that irrelevant to what I don't think that they have ill intentions. I don't think that no other type of beings they do have ill intentions. I feel that it depends on our interaction, because the thing is, you said some people see things on the corner of the eyes or see the shadowy figures and something, but it depends on how open we are to perceive. It's not that they now want to step up and help or do something, but I feel like that us as um, type of beings, we are growing up to the perception of, yeah, we are not the only things here around, if that makes sense. It's more like, I think that's more like we broadening the perception than um, they having to step up to help us in some way, if that makes sense.
It does. And coming from a mindset of a paranormal investigator, I have to now wonder when I'm on an investigation and like something moves, is it spirit or is it one of these interdimensional beings that's like, hey, you can see me, you saw me do that, right? And so yeah, it opens up, I think, our awareness, but also it causes, in my opinion, now we have to be even more careful when we're doing stuff because we I feel like we misidentify stuff so much already. But I don't, I would hate to be the person who goes and encounters an interdimensional being and is like, oh, that was just grandpa moving that for you. And he's like, I ain't your grandpa. Wait, why are you calling me their family when I'm something totally else? What's the deal here? And so, yeah,
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Paranormal investigator. Yeah, that's a very interesting. I feel that the thing is, when you're talking about if it's interdimensional, if it's not, um, like again, it's about like that Schrodinger's cat, right? Um, I feel that everything depends on density and frequency, therefore light. And um, judging by the things I've been learning and experiencing, it has to do with the threshold that we have to perceive light. Because if you think about the sun is our star and it's a red light, therefore we are just able to perceive red spectrum light, not blue, if that makes sense.
it does. And calling the sun red is just blowing my mind because I always see it as like an orange yellow, and now it's like a white. And I'm trying to figure out when did it change colors. And I'm like, I don't think I've ever seen a red sun.
But the spectrum of warm color, but yeah, I know what it's saying. Um, yeah, many things about that.
And Well, what's interesting too is when I think of the red sun, I can't help but because of television programming, Superman, for example, when he deals with the red sun, it either ages him, I think, or makes him turn his nature to the opposite. And so I'm like, wait a minute. If we're in a red sun, what is this red sun doing to us that our normal sun isn't doing? Or have we always been under the red sun and we're illusion that it's a yellow white sun?
I mean, like red as per light spectrum, as far because we are capped to see certain spectrum of light. For example, purple is just a fusion from red with blue. It's not an actually existent color. Like very curious, but it is what it is. That's Google it.
Right. Same thing with green
Google.
is blue and yellow mixed makes green.
But it's how we see in how to explain in contrast with the red light with the blue. I don't know how to explain.
It's how we see the frequencies because each
Yeah,
color has its own frequency.
but it is a thing. That's how we perceive purple.
And that's probably explains why there's so many different shades of it. Like people will call lavender and lilac purple, and I'm like, no, it's not. It's
Purple,
lilac and lavender.
right? And there's like the very dark pink magenta. I never know what is magenta. Do you know what is magenta?
Magenta is a deep dark red, but I don't know what color goes into it to make it.
But like, see, you said as a deep dark red, but like I knew that I thought that was a deep dark pink.
There might be some pink in it. Magenta is like just a shade off of maroon. So how do you see maroon?
And that's a question because you see different than I see. The same way with smells and taste. Did you know?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting. How does
it is.
smell?
It's fascinating, and I'm looking at it like I'm thinking the grass being green. I'm like, but what color really is it? Because like you're saying, green isn't a color. It's a
No,
fusion of two colors.
not green, purple. It's how we see the spectrum of the red light with the blue. I'm pretty sure.
Wow. I'm like getting so mind blown right now. I'm like, wait
Yeah.
a minute.
Okay, let me check my facts.
Oh, I'm not disputing it.
No, but now I was like, yes, because I saw. It's like, yeah. But yeah, many
But
interesting things about it.
yeah, and so do you? I'm wondering with all your experiences of being interdimensional contactee, an active experiencer, remote viewing, do you feel like because they showed you this different spectrum that somewhat activated these abilities within you, or do you think you had them before and they maybe just enhanced or made more aware of them?
That's a very interesting question. I feel that some things are abilities and abilities you can learn. Anybody can learn an ability like remote viewing. It's not something hard like to do, but I just came to know that remote viewing was remote viewing after I was doing it and I didn't know. Because since I'm little, I remember that I've been taken places by those other people, and they've been teaching me things. And so I'm not sure if it has to do with the genetics, or it's actually something that I open up myself to, therefore it kind of like activated something. I'm not very sure.
So I'm curious with your work. Have you, with everything that goes on, excuse me, they don't want me to ask this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Have you come across what like people are calling hybrids, where they have like considered star race qualities mixed with human qualities?
Yeah.
So do you feel like that the interdimensionals may be involved with hybrids and are watching out for them, or do they are they even aware of them, in your opinion?
All right. um I feel that if there is, because deep down we all hybrids, but of course that there is a factor for what I know and how I understand, that there are some um, individuals or families that they look over very closely because of the genetic factor, if that makes sense, on the hybridizations and stuff.
It does, and I'm curious too if, like, when you say everybody in basically on the planet in one way or another is a hybrid, why what is your opinion around how some choose to, say, activate or awaken their nature as a hybrid versus others who just sit there and say, nope, not a hybrid, don't believe in hybrids?
So let me see if I understood your question. So can you repeat that again? If what? Sorry.
I'm just curious, in your opinion, working with the interdimensionals and all these beings, when you look at the planet and you're like, you have some hybrids that have awoke, not woke, awakened, let me put it that way, and are saying, yes, I have hybrid abilities or hybrid nature,
Yes.
versus people who are, no, I'm not a hybrid. There's nothing about me that's a hybrid. Don't call me hybrid. Why do you think some of us awaken and some of us deny or just choose not to?
So, for example, something that I learned with one of my LinkedIn um, colleagues is that for you to get, for example, a specific genetics of a certain plant, it takes over 2,000 plants for you to reach that result. So, certain people, they might be, um, the genetics might lean more towards, let's say, the terrestrial human nature than so much so the other side, because if you see everything is duality, the poles and everything. So like some people are more linked towards one side, some might be the other. But for what I know, hybrids, they are in constant learning, constant visitations, constant even, um, let's say, upgrades, genetic upgrades, per se. So I feel that in that way, a hybrid might differ that way than a per se normal person, if that makes sense.
It
But
does, and I'm also curious with the science and how science has always tried to dictate like beliefs, and that's like a fine line between like religion versus science, and both are fighting for ground, I think, to have a understanding, so to speak, of the universe. But I feel like hybrids, are kind of the in betweens that are like breaking the mold and teaching the new science and new belief systems. Like you said, the next evolution. So, do you feel like with what's going on right now with mankind that, and I don't mean mankind as in man, I mean as in human esque, that we're somehow being activated to go to this next level, or are just those who you feel like have the genetic strain going through them will be the ones to go on, and those that don't, there'll be like another awakening for them, or does everyone awaken at the same time?
that's a very good question. Um, I feel that it's very personal to each person, very redundant, but it is what it is. The human nature is very competitive and behaves in a way that needs to be in group. So I do understand that some people might feel sometimes, or I'm even in or I'm even out. I don't want to be behind, or I want to keep. But like honestly, there is no such thing, because it's more into because the thing is, I cannot do the understanding work for you the same way you cannot do the understanding work for me, and it comes from perception, the awakening thing, I feel. So the role of hybrid is pretty much to work as an antenna, because there is some frequencies that a hybrid might directly receive because of code, because everything is code. So if I do have that code that I can get the radio, I do work as an antenna for people around me, because I do pursue as well your code, if that makes sense. So I feel I do know, I feel hybrids, and it's the same. The experiences are pretty much very similar. The way that they I learned was that everyone on their own way and understanding um, will come to um, a perception on their own pace, on their own line, if that makes sense. There's no race for the awakening, because there's no such thing as this timeline for you to reach certain threshold, if that makes sense, because your soul, let's say like that, it is eternal. So there's no actual competition to reach a certain, is things should happen organically, in a way that your soul will not forget, will reach a point that you will get what they call eternal life, right? That's the term that they used to tell me, explain. So the eternal life is when you don't forget.
No, and I think that's good because a lot of people right now are saying The reason why I was asking is they say, oh, we're in the time of the awakening and we need to get the masses to awaken so that this can happen and that can happen. And it's like, I feel like those of us who are already started or already well on the process are like, why do I have to wait for these people who just don't want to, so to speak? And I like how you say everybody does it on their own. There is no mass versus, needing so many people to then all of a sudden it's like, boom, we're there. We've met that quota.
Yeah, I feel that sometimes people might refer to, oh, let's together think about a unified purpose to achieve certain things. I do believe that energy manipulates reality and matter. So that can be very accurate and very true for you to have a higher conscience of what you're doing, how to project that to your perceived reality. But as far as any kind of salvation or any kind of, anyone will reach eventually on their own pace.
And are you familiar with the astral plane?
Somewhat, but what do you mean by, what is your understanding of astral plane?
The astral plane, in my opinion, is like reality. That's where we're free to be who we truly are and can travel to different worlds, different. We can be in space. We can wherever you can imagine. Basically, you can have happen and experience there. And here, I view as this is where we come to where we're like trying to learn how to let go of limiting factors or limiting beliefs and to refine our true selves so that when we're out there, we're not carrying all of the ideals of earth style living. That when we're out there, we're like, okay, we're doing an energy living. So we're not going to have the like quote unquote God complex that everyone talks about, going, oh yeah, you get so much freedom, you're like a god. It's like, no, you're not like a god, you're your divine true self. So yeah, that's not something to fear. And so my the reason I asked is your work with the interdimensionals and your background. I've Like for my instance, I could go into the astral plane real easy. I have friends who are like, it took me 2 years of guided meditations to figure out how to get into the astral plane. And some still haven't figured it out. And I was curious if it's something to do with the genetics and the science of those who are carrying the line, maybe the hybrids, they can go into the astral real easy and are like, yes, I understand this. I know where this is. Whereas the people who are struggling are those who are like, I'm not so sure I'm this or that and are denying their true self. So scientifically, are they making it harder on themselves?
Or maybe they have a predisposed a perception of what they should do or should see, and they can just not see it, that they have done that already. um, I do know that um, interdimensionals like to work a lot with people with native blood, meaning Native American, not only North but Central, South, but um, it has to have some native blood. One of the explanations of why I received for the hybridization, why there is such thing as hybridization programs and things like that, it's because it's implementing to our reality, pretty much. So we cannot see, or we cannot interact with that doesn't exist. And what does exist is everything that is in our code. For example, the pine trees, they have like with humans, they are, I don't know, I think above 50% compatible as far as DNA, if you have an idea. So I feel that the way that they explained was for them to be able to coexist with us, there has to have a code implementation.
So that would explain then why the indigenous native people were so attuned to the earth and could live on the land no matter where they were. They could thrive and survive. It may take a generation or two to adapt, but it would be possible to where the rest of us, so to speak, that were here, we took a lot longer, or we literally took ourselves out of the equation and built systems to make it more bearable. So we didn't learn to adapt. We just learned to say, like, for example, native indigenous lived out in the prairie, on the sun, and in desert. We look at it and go, if I'm going in the desert, I'm taking air conditioning and a
I'm gonna
fan. There's
die.
no way I'm going in that desert. And so that's what I'm meaning is they learn to adapt and survive in nature where we said, forget it. We're not going to adapt and learn. We're going to make it easier for ourselves and skip that process.
It's interesting, the analogy. Very interesting. But it's so you're just bringing up the fact of also um, why things are so natural for us, even if you don't have a background of living in the wilderness, as far as instincts, bringing the fact of epigenetics, how our genetic code carries behaviors and learning and everything. Um, yeah, but it's interesting.
See, I'm
Very
going to challenge you right there because I view the body has two genetic codes. One genetic code is the lineage of our parents and their parents back to when we first started. But I feel like there's a soul genetic code as well. And so the reason I say that is because there are people who may have Western ancestry who lived in cities. They're always in cities. They have no ties to native, indigenous, anywhere in their lineage, but yet they have the ability to adapt and think just like the native. And so I feel like that's on a soul level. Their soul was a native, possibly in another time, and that code was brought in, and you were able to tap into it and therefore utilize it. And that's why there are people who resonate with it that don't have any actual blood in them, so to speak. So I'm wondering, with your work and with the interdimensionals, have they ever approached that topic of, yeah, there's two different within one,
What do you mean? Two different people inside
like
of
two,
one
two
container?
different codes. Like
Two
one
different
code is
codes?
on the soul level, one code is on the human genetic, so to speak.
Yes. Yes. Some people here are here to mix, like you brought up, the earth seed with other kind of seed, and that comes with the integration of different types of matter, if that makes sense. Matter. Yeah, it's pretty, yeah, very possible.
So I'm wondering what was it that happened, like an aha moment for you where you sat there and looked at everything going on in the world and was like, you know what? Not only do I need to say write this children's book, The Whispers of the Starry Night, but also to found Eighten Wonder.
Very random.
Oh, your reaction says there's a story there. Can we have the story?
Oh, there is. So I'm a mother of two little girls. They are the love of my life. They teach me things every day, even to be better as a person, independent of being a mother. But I feel that the way that humans were brought out and were conditioned to believe is that we need to externalize things that are innate to be internal, um, such as the curiosity to know ourselves, and how interdimensional we can be once we focus our awareness to get to know who we are. And I feel that I was raised in a very indoctrinatory way. And one thing that I didn't want to do with my kids was to indoctrinate them, because there are things that everyone is born with that is just so unique that depending on how we condition them to believe what they are or who they are, we forget. And that can be very damaging. So I even get a little bit emotional, but I feel that it's important to have children getting a base of to look for who they are. You know, I got emotional. I apologize, but
Oh no, I totally understand, and if you need a moment, we can take a moment. But I'm kind of in an ironically similar way where I don't have any kids yet. Hopefully someday, but time will tell. But the one thing in my mind is I always, when I'm either dating or contemplating what my children's life would be like, the one constant I have is yes, they're going to learn the way of their mother, but they're also going to learn the way of me and how I was raised. I was like, I don't want them only learning one way to do things. I'm like, no, that's not, like you're saying, that's not the only way. And yeah, I mean, in essence, we're taking the uniqueness and the speciality of each individual person out, and we're just making drones, so to speak, of this is the way you're going to be. This is because this is what we were told, and it's just going to continue and continue and continue. So I think it's really cool that you saw that and was like, even used the term indoctrination. It was like, no, we're not going to indoctrinate the kids. We need
No.
to stop indoctrinating.
Yeah, and the need for looking to your inner self as well, and how you observing natural patterns is actually learning about the world around you. Because you see, alchemy. Going back to alchemy, everything is part of an alchemical process, and 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 results. So is life, so is understanding, so is everything. But we just need to kind of focus our awareness on things and observe them, and that way we can know more about ourselves than what we know. And that's the story about Whispers, the book. And about Aten Wonder. The thing is, Aten Wonder wasn't even an Aten Wonder before, because the thing is, I have my little rituals. I have my little connections. Interdimensionals, they cannot speak, unfortunately for now, like you and I. Excuse me. But the way that happens with me is through uh, telepathy, is through even electromagnetic some things. I don't know how to say that. When I'm thinking on, I'm meditating, pondering about something, they communicate that way. There's a lot of mix of numbers. It has to do a lot with also the hour that is communicated. So it's magic. It's alchemy. It's, that's once it's a life path. Once you get into it, it gets easier to understand things in a way. But Aten Wonder came with the intent of unifying, actually, because we are very um, sparse. We are very, like, we know we have LinkedIn, we know we have other social media platforms, but there is no space that is actually dedicated for that. And I feel that is part of our reality, and we all know that is, but still we face some kind of prejudice or censorship. There is a lot of target on our freedom of speech, and how and what we can show and what we can share. So I feel that with communications that I've had, I felt that was necessary to bring up to awareness a hub that we could get our news, we could get our uh, informations. Because as before, like, I didn't have much knowledge of creators like you, like other ones on LinkedIn. I just came to know about that because I went there and I looked, and there's the algorithm thing, but not everybody is as savvy with technology or social medias, and not everybody actually knows about very relevant creators, and people that share valuable information about it. So that should need a point of that people can refer to in order to learn more, in order to get informed, in order to have a safe space that supports um, their experiences and their learning, if that makes sense.
It does, and I would like to say thank you for creating that and seeing that was something that was needed and actually dove in and did it. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And also, was a way that I thought that we could make it more accessible to know about aerospace technology and these other things. Because what we see now, it's not only UFOs, but drones, but military aircraft that look very similar to the non-human intelligence ones. So I feel that it's a place that we can actually learn what is going on, have better information, like a collective effort of gathering it, if that makes sense.
It does, and that to me is a beautiful thing that I think is needed a lot more of in this world instead of the collective of, look, this is what my parents were taught, so this is what you're going to be taught. And my grandparents was taught if it was good enough for them, it's good enough for you. You don't need to break the mold. And I'm like, yeah, we forget we were all born to break those molds.
Yeah.
And I know we're approaching the hour. And so, do you have time for a few more questions or do you need to
Yeah.
run?
No, I do have time. It's
Okay.
okay.
I'm curious with your, referencing alchemy and your viewpoint of it. I've read and I kind of go back every once in a while and read Pueblo Coelho, I think or I think that's how
Paulo
you
Coelho.
yeah, the book The Alchemist. Is that one that you're familiar with, and that was that like a key for you to understanding?
Do you believe I haven't read fully The Alchemist? Do you believe that? I
Actually,
have.
I do because I haven't even fully read it yet. I go back, I get to a certain point, I put it down, and I'll pick it up, and I'll be like, oh, let me start here. Then I'll be closer to where I leave off, and I always leave off at the same point.
I know. I know. I totally feel it. I from the same author Paulo Coelho. I've read my favorite book is actually Brida. It's about a girl that seeks for a mentor, and she goes into her inner work, and it's a awesome book. I totally recommend from him. And also, which one? Veronica Decides to Die is a good book too. It brings a lot of perspective. The end, she doesn't, spoiler, but the conclusion that she takes from the beginning of she observing her life and the around of where she lives to the actual realization that she doesn't. It's just like it's very. I like Paulo Coelho because he writes in a way that makes you think.
Right, because yeah, I remember reading like the beginning and being like, oh, this is going to be such an interesting story of how he's going to get to this metal and then transform this metal into another metal, and then you're like, wait, there's no metals in this book. It's all introspective. Wait a minute, hold up. And it's like before you realize it, you're like, man, the seed has been planted, and it's like, yep, it's there. I think that was one of the brilliant ways of his writing was he plants the seed without you even realizing there's a seed being planted.
Yeah, and that's the process of alchemy that you can turn any metal into another one. And some might even say the elixir of life or the philosopher's stone, or you know, there are many cool things about alchemy. Um, yeah, between matter and persist spirit, that's it's very interesting, and that's where we find magic. We found like in the early days was the medicine women, the that was the real alchemist, because it's also part alchemy for you to be able to transform metals yourself, to heal. So it's all around the like I say, the alchemical processes of all things and how they actually integrate with each other to
Right.
form something else.
And I feel like the way that society and the powers that be that wanted to keep that from us were constantly drilling into us alchemy is simply when you change lead into gold. And so you're like, okay, so I changed lead into gold. Okay, that's alchemy. Well, that's, you know, I don't want to make lead into gold. So you don't think about alchemy anymore. And it's like, until you truly understand, wait a minute, alchemy is not limited to that, then all of a sudden your mind goes, wait a minute, now I understand why I do what I do and can change why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I feel like, yeah, that's, I think, like the first step of the journey is like in The Alchemist is to wake up and realize what you think your goal and what you're pursuing is not actually what you're pursuing, and realizing and starting to tune into what are you really pursuing.
But if you see, it is what you're pursuing because it's on the path of the pursuit. Like as alchemy, like we were just talking about, transform lead into thin gold, then into silver. They all go through a process that they um, evaporate and do things that take off the impurities. And this process is part of the becoming, you know? So, yeah, it's just to the famous letting go, I think, part of the famous letting go that people talk so much about.
Right.
But
I was just meaning different, pursuing different things. Is you started with wanting to be the rich guy with all the silver and gold, but realizing as you're going through this, going, wait a minute, silver and gold isn't what's driving me. This is what's driving me. This is what I'm really pursuing. And so that's what I meant by finding out what you were pursuing isn't what you were actually pursuing.
true, I see what you mean. No, yeah, but added the point of perception right there.
Exactly. Our perception has is a skill that we were taught, but under our generations we were indoctrinated. This is how you're going to perceive this. Like we were saying, the sun, seeing it as one spectrum when it's another spectrum. We're taught and drained and drilled into us, sky is blue, grass is green, the shirt you're wearing is red, I'm wearing blue. We may not actually be wearing blue and red, and the grass may not be green, and the sky may be, another color, but we've never been taught to question it. We've always been told this is what it is and accept it.
Yes, yes. But always, have you realized or just observed that it's always taking uh, our perception to outer something else, so we like divert the attention to perceive things like that.
It is, and I
Yeah.
think and I mentioned to you, like when I get to an idea, I'll go to a movie to make it easier. I feel like the movie that brought it home about our perceptions was the movie Contact, where they're talking about is there life out there, and he responds, it's an awful lot of wasted space if we're the only beings around. And I'm like, to me, that's like the biggest, like, eye opening statement that you can make to someone and go, look, we are not the only group of beings in this universe or multiverse. Otherwise, we wouldn't need this vastness around us. We would just need where we are.
That's true. But I think that also comes from fear as well. But I do also believe that it is something that I was taught, that we are deprogramming, learning to,
I agree.
because if you see, we don't fear a house cat, we don't fear a dog, depending on the dog, but generally we don't. But what I mean is that, like, we are just comfortable, um, in the normal of everything, even order of things is not rest, is rest and movement. And that's how the quote, that's how we know that the God exists, like, quote type thing. But I feel that as we deprogram the concept of living by, depending on the external stimuli of fear to perceive something or to act on something, I think that as we um, focus more inner and getting to know ourselves, we see that things have been around all over for more time than what we imagine. Um, it's about truly about perception.
It
And
is. And
I go ahead. Sorry.
oh, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, no, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just saying, with perception, I mean, we can look at, I mean, we think UFOs are a modern discovery to say, look, there's discs in our skies. But when you go back and look at like a lot of the Renaissance and Dark Age paintings, there are UFOs in there. But we've never noticed them until we had the modern concept of UFO or UAP. And now we look at it and go, wait a minute, there's an image right there. But this was painted in the 1700s or 1600s. How did I never see that before? And I had a great teacher tell the story. If you were to take a group of, say, 12 people and you walk outside because you hear a noise, four people believe in UFOs and see this UFO hovering in the parking lot and just taking in all the beauty and wonder of that. Four are on the fence. They're like, it's possible, but I won't believe it till I see it. So they see a fuzzy object. Can't quite make it out, but they're like, there's something there. Don't really know what it is. And then you have four that are like, UFOs don't exist. Y'all are just need to be committed. You're whacked in the brain. And they see absolutely nothing. Who are the right ones? Well, they're all right because they're all viewing through their perceptors. And so that's why we have been, I think, as a civilization, they've always been there, but we never had a way of describing them. So they've never been described
That's
until
so
now.
true. That's true. Because you see, in biblical context, they call the chariot of fire. Other scripts they call the chariot of God, of the gods,
Mm-hmm.
or something like that. The ball of fire, um, and many, 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 many other things. But they always been here. They
Right.
always been.
And in ancient stories, you hear of so and so was riding a chariot through the sky. Well, they weren't actually riding a chariot. That's the term they knew to describe a vehicle back then.
Exactly.
And the fact that it's in the sky says this was a ship. this person is in a ship. But people want to go and say, oh, this was a holy chariot that could fly. I'm like, well, I guess if that's how you want to describe it, that's fine. But I mean, they're both the same thing. It's a kind of a technicality there that I guess some people feel more comfortable with the thought of it's a earthly creation that's heavenly flying instead of from somewhere else.
That's so true. I'm not even going that far. Back in 2012, I had a visit, and today I know it was a so-called Anunnaki, but back then I thought it was just a spiritual something because I didn't know how to describe it and what it was. And yeah,
Yeah,
simple like that.
and the amazing thing is we kind of look at ourselves now like we're so proud and going, yeah, I can describe it. It was this or this. But we still, in my opinion, we really don't know that that's what that was. It's just our mind goes, that's the closest thing that I can go, yes, this is what we saw. So I'm going to call it this until the next stage when somebody goes, oh, this person is this. We're like, oh, I thought it was this. Nope, it's this. And
Yeah,
so, yeah, our terms and our visual perceptors, they're always the same. It's just our comprehension is what's evolving.
that's true. That's true. And the perception come with it. Thanks the internet.
Yeah, the good internet.
Thanks the internet.
Not the other internet where you can find God knows what under any term.
Exactly.
No, we're talking
Exactly.
about the good internet.
But if you see, talking about how to describe things and how long, like we knew about those things and how long things are happening. So people talk about. I was actually reading a little bit. I think a couple weeks ago. I just remembered now. Um, how long we came to know that these are this and the technology is technology. But if you see, before that crash with the Roswell UFO, about around 5 years before that, um, our uh, beautiful US already had access to such technology.
Oh yeah.
Uh-huh. And it was what, 40s, early 40s, I think late 30s, 1940s, 1930s. And it's just curious to see uh, the level of technology that we had, but it's not even all out, or we're not even aware or knowledgeable about those types of technologies and things that helps us understand what they are, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there are stories if you listen to the tales of like frontier west, like 17, 1800s.
Hmm.
There are stories of flying objects and them being like they viewed them as omens. And so they'd say, yeah, we saw this strange burning light go across the sky. And they're like, oh, we knew trouble was coming. And it's like, if you look at it and go, burning light going across the sky, that could be like maybe a craft that was damaged and was on fire. So it looked like a fireball going across the sky.
I
And
don't.
that's how they would describe it. Or if they've seen like heat waves around it, like energy fluctuating, they may be like burning image going by. And it's
I,
like, yeah, we have to take a moment and step back and we have to remember what was the perception level of that time to describe something.
That's so true. That's so true. Have you experienced like a UFO already yourself? Just
I
chilling?
have probably a total of 7 or 8 times.
That's so cool. And were all those like balls the ones that keeps doing this?
Actually, so one was kind of like I'd almost say like cigar shape, but it had something sticking up the top. So it was kind of like it almost looked like a submarine in the sky. And so I was like, that one was interesting.
What color?
And majority of them, I would say, are kind of they look like balls of light in the sky.
Okay.
And one occasion, I actually got my mother to come out and look at was there was like, according to my memory and perception of the night, one cloud amongst the entire sky where I was looking over my house at the time because I was visiting her, and I saw like a red flash and a yellow flash, and then I'd see a few more flashes, and I was like, my mind, the first thing my mind goes, there's a UFO battle. There's a space battle being fought right over my house over there because I mean it was pure silence. And it's not ball lightning because ball lightning is the same color and it's like
But what would
moves
they
around and
do?
everything. But
It's just
these look
like
like impacts. It
for
looked
real?
like if you look at a science fiction movie where you see like the laser hits like the shield and it creates this like burst, that's what it would look like is that color burst every few seconds in random places. And I'm like, there's no
Wow.
sound. There's these
No sound.
random looking lights. That looks like a battle. That's what my mind filtered to.
And you didn't even have a phone at the time,
It was
did
in
you?
my pocket.
I know, I know, I know.
Yeah.
I do the
I'm like,
same thing.
perfect moment to film something. And it's like,
But you're so present that you
yeah.
don't bother. That it doesn't matter for any other person to validate. I feel. I know how that is.
So the
Yeah.
last two times that I've seen them, I actually have taken my phone out and taken like I use my paranormal investigator skill because we always take 3 photos to say, okay, there's a speck in this photo. It's in the same spot in the photo before, same photo after. That's just a lens spot or just reflection, something. Okay. But if it's like the middle photo has something in the top, but it's not in the other two pictures, we're like, oh, we have evidence of something because it's not in the other photos that were taken at the same time. So it's like I do that when I take pictures of the what I think is a UFO in the sky. I'm like 3 photos.
I have a question. In your opinion, as you used to investigate, because I'm very clueless. For example, last night I had those which people are seeing more frequently, those that just the lights that goes woo, woo, like on the sky, just
Right.
goes. Last night I had a few and static ones, but like, is it, in your opinion, is it better for you to video and then take screenshots or like take the frame that something happened, or pictures, something different between pictures and videos about capturing this kind of phenomenon?
So to answer that question is very complex because if it's something in motion, if you were to take the time to do stills, you're constantly having to move the camera to
Yeah.
keep it in frame. So you're losing the element of saying this is something. So if it's in motion, I would say film it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can pause, look at the video later, but try and figure out what's what. But if it's a stationary object in the sky, I would take photos first. And if you get the feeling like, is this moving ever so slightly or is it altering? Then I would say take a short little video and look at the video and see, like, is it a circle? Does it become a square? Does it become a straight line? Does it actually move in space? Because in reality, even if you're moving your phone because you're not totally perfectly still, you're not going to interfere with that circle to make it a straight line. There's no amount of you fidgeting with that camera to have it morph into that.
Yeah,
So
that
to
makes
me,
sense.
that's the why I would say if you feel like you're seeing that, take a video as well, because then you can get the video camera to say, yes, you are seeing what you're seeing, or nope, I thought I was seeing it. My mind was playing a trick on me. Oh well, but it's still a UFO in the pictures because the object, I never moved the camera, but the object moved ever so slightly. So, yeah, and so it really depends on what the object's doing and what your focus of what you're wanting to see is.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Perception.
Perception. Yeah, that the perception. I don't know
Boy,
because sometimes I don't know technology because sometimes pictures do something different with the image. I don't
oh no,
know.
I know. I was just thinking in my head. I've been seeing on TikTok the Muppets skit with Kermit going into Sandra Bullock's office and going, "There's something strange that happens whenever I say this word," and he goes, "What? Phenomena." And all of a sudden, these critters come out making this like song, and he's like, "They only come out when they do that." And she's like, "Can I try?" Yeah. So she does it, and they come out. And so when I go, perception, it's like my mind was going, "Yeah, we're gonna make this the new phenomena of TikTok, except we're gonna make it the word perception."
Wow. Yeah, they're bringing it up. Like there's a name for that. Predictive programming.
Yep.
I don't know. Maybe.
And
But
the
yeah.
mind trap about it is, to me, when it comes to predictive programming, is you think you're breaking free because you know that's what's happening, and so you're like, yeah, they can't fool me, they can't program me. But yet
They
that
can.
response is another predictive program, and it's like there's so many programs built on top of each other. So like it makes us wonder, how will we ever know we're truly free of the programming?
We never, because there's always a conditioning behavior that we have and we don't know. For I was going to say something, it ran away from my brain right now.
Well, this might help jog your memory, is because when you're saying that, the movie Matrix in the trilogy, remember when he's talking about, well, who governs the programs? And she goes, see the birds, there's a program governing them. The trees had their own program. The programs that are doing their job, you don't ever know about. The ones that are damaged and need work are the ones you know about. So to me, it's like
Yep.
we're always going to be programmed,
Yeah.
but the less we know about being programmed, the more we're
Program. Yeah.
rightly being learning.
It is even the whole movement of the awakening and everything. There's a lot of that is dispersion that I'm aware of that I can see definitely through. You're talking about programming and how society, like watching TikTok and stuff. I do watch some TikTok sometimes. I was more, but like being very but I do more Instagram now. But the thing is, technology. Technology is good, but it's also something that we need to be to made aware to use. Because, for example, one thing that I was told to be careful about it, because the way that we actually learn things that are not physical is through spiritual. And when we rely too much on other people or other situations, putting a title, a name to what we should perceive is a little bit dangerous. Reason why the more you turn in and learn, try to learn through your own spiritual connections. Of course, it's good to have some, people that are well, have good intentions and everything, but um, we think that we are going through a big disclosure, but what disclosure means, right? To disclose something. And until now we haven't been disclosed anything, but we have been given names, we have been given things to perceive from and through and for.
Right.
So yeah, just be a little bit careful about it, because when we think that, like you said, we're not being programmed, that's when we are.
Right. And a way too to look at the perception is when you look at like a marble slab or a countertop or like a tabletop, and your mind goes and runs your hand across and says, "Feel how smooth this is. This is perfect, totally smooth." You put it under a microscope, it is the farthest thing from smooth. But
True.
our mind perceives it as being smooth. And so it's like, yeah, our mind's eye, because we were taught tabletops are smooth, that those are smooth, even though they're really not.
But then we overlook that possibility. And then sometimes we might even fight to prove that that table is perfectly plain.
See, and I
Yeah.
was just thinking about it, and in another way is we all have been taught perfection is a double edged sword. It's either something that's great when you achieve it or something you'll never achieve. And I'm like, looking at that tabletop or countertop, and your mind saying, yes, this is smooth. This is perfect. Even though it's flawed under a microscope, we still see it as perfect. So, therefore, perfection, I've always thought of, and I just never had an analogy to compare it to, now I do, is the acceptance of those flaws makes us realize how perfect it is. Even though it's flawed, it's still perfect. So, therefore, when we see ourselves, when we reach our perfect state, we're seeing ourselves flawed, but we're not focused on the fact we're flawed. We just accept we are who we are. Therefore, we've reached the perfect state.
Until we realize we don't, we haven't.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, look at like Tron Evolution. I don't know. Did you see that movie?
No,
Well,
not
there's
yet.
a
What is the name?
Tron Evolution.
Crone or drone?
Tron. Tron.
Okay, Tron Evolution. No, but I'll take note. Tron Evolution. Okay.
There's a scene in there where I won't give away the movie, but he creates a technological double of himself. so to speak.
Hmm.
And the job of the technological double is to create the perfect system.
Hmm.
And he goes face to face with him and he goes, I did what you asked. I created the perfect system. And I won't spoil the movie for you to see what comes of that conversation, but that conversation is ties into what you were saying. It's perfect until you see something else and you realize some another awareness. So it's like their answer to that point for you is in that movie.
Hmm. Interesting. I'm gonna watch actually after here. I have this ritual every night. I go to the couch to cuddle and watch movies, and yeah. But interesting. I say that for the perspective point of I've had contact connection with some beings that they would be doing this in human containers for learning, and it's something that over, let's say over there, they always do. So for example, we perceive higher level density beings as perfect, but it's just a bracket reached. It's not that they are that perfect, even though, because they, one of the things that I learned with them is like to learn from the smallest and simple things. And one of the reasons that they go to lower level realities, let's say low level density realities, to go through a life experience is to learn from it, even though they are in a density level that that is technically not like ours, but they do that to sometimes rehabilitation, sometimes for learning, sometimes yeah, experiences. It's
Very cool.
yeah,
Well, we've actually gone a little bit over the hour and a half. So,
yeah.
where can people find you?
um People can find me on Instagram. It's at Madel Niff, my name. LinkedIn as well. Soon on Hat and Wonder. It's soon to be launched. But yeah, on those places.
Very cool. And I'm just putting that in the chat room because I found your LinkedIn and I found um, your website. So I put those in the description, but I didn't. Somehow I missed finding your uh, Instagram. So I wanted to make sure I got that out.
Yeah, it's
And
just the at. Apologize. It's just the at and my first and last name.
yeah, there we go. So, last question of the night. My favorite question to ask people, my guests, from your life's experiences from birth to now, doesn't have to relate to what we talked about. What's a golden nugget you would like to share with the audience?
To always know that you know nothing.
That's actually a really good one.
And um, it just helps you to put yourself in your place, to the point that even like I said, with the experiences I'm fortunate to have right now, it's very fortunate, but before it was difficult, very fearful. But there's no higher level, 10 level, 11 level. that you can reach here anything. There's no such thing as ascended masters or anything. If you're ascended master, you're not here. So know that you know nothing.
No, that
I
makes
I don't
sense.
know nothing.
Yeah, that makes sense because I like to tell people when they first go in an investigation, I'm like, you have to go in completely open, protected but open, because if you go in and think, okay, I'm going to see something move, and you'll hear something, you're going to dismiss hearing something because you're like, nope, it's going to look like something moving. And so you'll miss all these other experiences. So you got to be open to everything. So, yeah, that is truly wise wisdom there.
Thanks. That helps keep humble.
It does.
Mm-hmm. Because human ego can be really toxic and nobody's free from it.
That's why I like to refer to the ego as the earth guide only, because it won't work anywhere else.
No, but even though it can be very useful, but it's knowing that you know nothing, really, pretty much.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Madel, for being on the show and trusting me to come on and spend this episode with me here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. That was very nice. I didn't even know I was so nervous. I didn't even know that was going to take more than planned. But yeah, that was very nice being here. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad, and hopefully in the future we may see you back on.
Yeah, I'd love to. But yeah, thank you so much for tonight.
Yes, thank you, and thank you to everyone who's watching and who will watch in the replays. So, as I usually end, I'm just going to say good night, good day, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. And when you wake up, check out this episode. Madel is so worth checking out and hearing her stories.
Yeah, just a few, but you're very nice to talk with too. I
Well,
like your
thank you.
shows.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I try my best.
But yeah, thank you.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Night.